The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to Chit-Chatting with Jocelyn. I'm Jocelyn, and I want to thank you for joining us today. My guest is Jana El-Sayed, and she's going to be talking about Know and Tell. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Know and Tell is a child advocacy group that reaches out and helps children. They run along, if I understand correctly, side by side with DCYS and other organizations such as that. Is that correct?
So Know and Tell is the Grant State Children's Alliance initiative. They do work with DCYF on a regular basis. We really talk about collaboration and the importance of all different people coming together for child safety. The Grant State Children's Alliance oversees all the child advocacy centers throughout the state.
Now, what's a child advocacy center?
So if a child was sexually abused or felony level physical abuse or had seen significant trauma, maybe parents fighting or something like that led into guns or different things like that, they would actually go to a child advocacy center to receive a forensic interview. So forensic interviewers are highly trained to be able to be non-biased and ask questions to really get the truth out. And they talk to children in a way that the child feels comfortable talking about it, even if in other situations they may not tell. So let's backtrack just a little bit. People are probably going to be wondering why you have the Miss Stratum sash and crown on. I believe this is part of your platform, right, and that you are working directly with them as Miss Stratum. Yes, so my social impact is called #JanaForKids, the butterfly effect. So I really try to improve the youth of New Hampshire in any way possible, and one of those being children that are affected by child abuse.
All right, so back to the child, so just wanted to set that.
Yeah.
Back to the Child Advocacy Center. So we have a child that has been involved in a trauma, felony level at, whatever. They come to the center. Now, I would assume, like you said, you have highly, highly trained professionals to work with the children. So they totally understand how to speak with them, how to reach out to them, how to make them feel safe. So when you say interview, I would assume there's a room,
right,
probably two-way mirrors, that type of thing, and they would slowly work with the children?
So a lot of people think that, but there aren't two-way mirrors. The forensic interviewer usually has a headpiece on, and then there's a multidisciplinary team that's actually in another room that is watching it on a closed-circuit TV. So that way the child only has to tell their story once, because everyone that needs the information, whether it be DCYF, law enforcement, a county attorney, all those different people are at the table, but instead of overwhelming the child, they're just talking to that one forensic interviewer.
I like that very much. I would think that that would be a great way to conduct interviews for any survivor of any crime.
Some child advocacy centers do see people over the age of 18.
Oh, okay.
Child advocacy centers are fairly new, and before you would have to actually go to a police station. And for a child to go to a police station and be interviewed, it almost seems like something that they did something wrong, or it's really scary for them. And that's not what you want to talk to a potential victim in that type of way.
Well, exactly. And I would think that with children, you would want them to be as comfortable as possible so that they could give you the most information and be as factual as they can.
And the great thing about the forensic interview is that it really helps with the court proceedings. In the state of New Hampshire, unfortunately, children do have to testify. The accuser has the right.
Oh.
So these children, if it does go to that level, have to get on stand and talk about it. So when they've actually had that forensic interview, that gives the baseline and gives the county attorney enough information so they can prosecute. And within that, it's really talking to the child and making sure that you understand the slang terms, for example. So children use different slang terms for body parts. They aren't really taught the right anatomical words. So it's so important for a forensic interviewer to understand and use those words with the child, because it's a defender's dream to be able to go up and interrogate the child and use the proper terms instead, and then the child be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
And then it looks like the child's lying.
Well, it also would seem to me that once the prosecutor and everybody has the original the child testifying, like you said, with the words that they use, the slang that they use, or the terminology, that pretty much sets the table, and then they can go on from there. Instead of rehashing the little itty bitty details, they can go more directly to what is necessary for the prosecution. But I'm blown away that they still have children testifying in court right there, when in so many different states and courthouses, and I know the child is not the accused, but an accused person gets to do it by video.
So different states have different laws. In New Hampshire, unfortunately, they do. We are trying to bring new things like having a service animal so that they have a dog with them to make them feel more comfortable. That's something fairly new that states are doing. I would love to see that testifying in front of them go away completely. I don't think it's right. You have the forensic interview, which should be admissible and be used.
Exactly.
But
yeah, so some things that we're leaping ahead, and then in other things we're still kind of backwards, and that to me seems very backwards. Same as, so with the world just being just so absolutely crazy lately, would children or anybody that's being sex trafficked be part of this whole process?
Yep, so in order to have a forensic interview, you would just have to have either an officer or DCYF ask for that interview. They call the CAC, and then the CAC will set it up with the family or the person, and then the non-offending caregiver is able to go with the child. So they see all different sorts of trauma, but it's just really a factual-based way to get the most information. And like I said, they have that earpiece, so if they're talking about where that incident happened and the officer wants more information to be able to say, like, yes, there is a place like this.
He could speak to them.
He can talk to them, and then the forensic interviewer knows what more they need to do and what more they need to ask, because you never want to stop a child that's talking about trauma. You want to just let them talk.
Exactly, and by the people listening in the other room, they're able to direct some of the questions at the appropriate time. Right. So I would think also as the person that's doing the interviewing, it's, I would think, very difficult not to become totally emotionally involved. I mean, you'd have to be inhuman not to be involved, but there has to be a little bit of distance that they can ask the appropriate questions to make the whole process go smoother. And like you said, get the information. Like the police officer might need this detail, but the psychologist might need that detail, and on and on. So, wow.
And they see children 3 to 18.
3 to 18?
You'd be so shocked. But when you think about child development, if a 3-year-old is verbal, they can actually get a lot of information. That's why they're so highly trained. It's really important to have that forensic interview because they know how to talk to children of all different ages, and they're great. You could have a child that's actually rolling around on the floor, and the forensic interview is going to say whatever that child needs to do to get through this interview, we're okay with that.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
It's a little mind-boggling because so many people watch TV shows, you know, Forensic Files and all these crime shows, and we know that there's some truth in there. There's definitely some drama and acting in there. And you just assume that everybody sits in a chair and would talk like we are or over a table.
Right.
As parents, as mothers, as caregivers, we would say, yeah, the child could roll around on the floor, but I don't think it would occur to us that that would be I don't want to say that it would be okay, but that we could actually get the information necessary. Yep. But when you say it that way, I mean, stuffed toys, a few little things around so that they can...
Usually there's Play-Doh in the room, different things depending on the age group. Usually they have a teen room for the waiting room and then a younger room with toys. They really want to make sure that they feel relaxed. We have videos that we show before the child gets there just to know what to expect because it can be scary. We do ask that the families say, well, we're going to go to this place. And then it's really trying to be very transparent with the child and allowing the child to know that this is a safe place to talk.
Okay. So when you say videos, now is that a video for the adults or for the child as well?
So when the video is, when the closed circuit TV it finishes, they actually do 2 copies depending. If DCYF is involved, DCYF will get a copy and then law enforcement will get the second copy. The CACs do not keep it. Oh,
okay. That's pretty interesting. Have you watched one of these interviews?
I have. I've watched a couple of different age groups, and it's really truly amazing when you see the younger ones, what they're actually able to talk about. It can be heartbreaking, of course, to have to hear about it, but the reality is child advocacy centers in the state of New Hampshire see over 2,500 kids a year.
2,500 kids a year?
And then you have
And those are only the ones you know about.
Right, and we know from statistics that only 1 in 10 children will actually disclose their abuse, leaving the other 9 that we have to actually take the steps to see something is going on and reach out and make sure that these children are okay, which is where Know and Tell comes in.
Okay, so Know and Tell is an actual course, a
Yes.
class,
Yes.
an instruction. Now, I know you do Know and Tell courses,
Right.
and where do you do that? Do you do that in a classroom, or do you also go out to adults and different companies, or maybe even teachers?
We really try to focus in right now on school districts and then child-facing nonprofit organizations, but our overall goal would be to have every single adult in the state of New Hampshire Know and Tell trained. New Hampshire is one of the only states in the country that is a mandated reporting state.
Now, what does that mean?
So anyone over the age of 18 is required by law to report child abuse or neglect if they suspect it. A lot of other states have professional reporters, meaning if you were a teacher or a camp counselor, you would be required
Nurse,
to make that
doctor,
call.
something like
but
that,
you
yeah.
and I are mandated reporters, and we could actually be charged with a fine up to $1,000 and a charge of a misdemeanor if we were to fail to do so.
I had no idea. Actually, I did, but you're now saying it officially. I had a good idea because in one of the jobs that I worked, if we saw any type of abuse,
Right.
we would have to write the report and call immediately if it was during regular hours that day or the next morning. So I do know that, but I did not know that the everyday person, the average citizen over the age of 18, is mandated to report it, even if it's suspected.
Yes. You
Wow.
only have to have suspicion in the state of New Hampshire.
Now, do you, so there you go, people, over 18 mandated if you
Yes.
suspect abuse. And who would they call?
DCYF.
DCYF.
So DCYF is now open 24/7. So
Okay.
that's a great resource, and you would want to call as soon as possible, especially if it was an emergency situation. We say that if it's a real emergency, definitely call 911, meaning
Yes.
if you're seeing a child be physically assaulted by someone, then you're really going to make that 911 call. But if you have if you're a teacher, for example, and you think that there might be sexual abuse going on, it's so important to make that call as soon as possible, because DCYF does have to make a team get together and go see that child. And if the potential offender is in home, they really need to make that plan quickly to get that child help instead of potentially causing them more harm.
That was going to be my question, and I'm sure it differs from case to case and from child to child. Is there an average response time?
So there's 3 different levels when it comes to DCYF. So you could be a level 1, a level 2, or a level 3. So level 1s, you only have 24 hours to reach that child, make contact with the child, and they're really trying to do it as soon as possible because that's an immediate danger. That's really high risk. Level 2, 48 hours, and level 3, 72 hours. So if it gets screened in, the most time that you should wait to have that contact with DCYF and the child is 3 days.
That's pretty fast. I mean, that's fast. When I think about of all the traumas and EMS and fire and police, when they need debriefing and stuff, it doesn't always happen that quickly. So I am a little shocked, but I'm very happy.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
shocked but very happy that it happens that quickly, because you need to get in there and save that child
Right.
as quick as possible, or at least determine what is really going on.
Right.
Wow. Now, when you go into the schools, do you mostly do it with teachers, or do you actually do a little bit of classroom work with the children?
So we don't work with the children.
Okay.
Know and Tell is only an adult initiative, but what we found is we have these Know and Tell pins, and we have some other swag like stickers and all these different things, and we're finding that children are seeing the Know and Tell logo and they're asking questions, and they're saying, well, what if I know someone that's being abused? There was actually a story from my coworker. She was at the soccer field with her daughter, and a little boy kept coming up to her over and over again asking questions about Know and Tell. She had a pulse on it. She was making phone calls to the guidance counselor. She didn't feel it was him. She did feel that it was a friend, but he was concerned for a friend. And a couple weeks later, he actually convinced that friend to go to a guidance counselor, and there was a full disclosure of physical abuse that was going on within the home.
Wow.
So kids are recognizing the signs and they are seeing those pins, and we can't promise that anybody wearing a pin is a good person or is going to do something for you, but we can say that they've been know and tell educated. They know the signs and they could possibly get you the help that you needed.
So when you talk about signs, again, specific to each
Right.
different case, each different crime, but let's pick one. So let's say there's a child that's being left home alone
Right.
for an extended amount of time. So what would be some signs we'd want to look for or be,
Well,
observing?
first, to be mindful of New Hampshire's laws. So in the state of New Hampshire, there's actually no age that determines that that child can or cannot be home alone.
Okay.
So that's something that usually shocks people. Technically, there's no law saying at this
Really?
age. We don't have that. But all you need is suspicion of neglect. So if you have that gut feeling, I say it all the time, if you're going to think about that child before you go to bed, or you get that stomach feeling that something's going on, that's when you should be making that phone call to DCYF. Because if you can't stop thinking about it, that's your no and tell moment.
That's the hair on the
You
back
need to
of your
make that
neck,
call.
which is exactly why I asked that, because just being home alone is not an issue, but coming to school or coming to
Tired,
your friend's
with no
house overly
food.
tired, exactly, no food, which is going to be my next question. So if a child, so again, that would be considered neglect.
Right.
So a child being overly tired,
They're all
hungry,
Yep.
asking for food,
They-
going to get a drink of water a lot, I remember was one of the indications.
DCYF has been really great about talking to us. We have that collaboration piece between child advocacy centers, Know and Tell, and DCYF. And one of the biggest things that they are trying to make known is that with our new director at DCYF, new resources have come back that were taken away years ago.
good.
So potential resources. So maybe it isn't willful neglect, because there is a difference between a family that's struggling financially that just really can't make ends meet for that family versus someone that's doing it on purpose. So
Right.
making sure that there's that separation. And then how I always put it as a facilitator for Know and Tell is think about the help that you could be providing that family. That child might now have that winter coat and hat, or might have that dinner that they didn't have before because you made that phone call.
I like that. So that would be one circumstance. So let's go to a harder one. Let's say there's a child that you suspect is being sexually abused. What are a couple of signs that you might want to look for? I mean, again, suspicion is one thing, the hair on the back of your neck and your stomach, but what would be a tangible sign?
There's a lot of different ones depending on their age. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but we are teaching about sex and our bodies at a younger age. But when you have a child that knows that sex is about gratification, that's a huge red flag. Why do they know that? Talking about pornography, they shouldn't be seeing that at that age. Pornography has actually been added to sexual abuse definitions for the state of New Hampshire, which a lot of people don't know about. So you can be making a phone call based on that. Younger children, when you think of like first or second grade, children that were potty trained and doing very well, all of a sudden they're bedwetting again, because that's the psychological response that they're having to the trauma. So there's varying things, or even, of course, if you see a child trying to undress another child, you see that a lot, or hear about that a lot on the playground. They're doing it behind objects, trying to hide, or on the bus. The bus is another huge one where we're hearing all these stories from.
So with my boys growing up, that was always the biggest source
Right.
of issues and sexual problems and bullying. So bullying, let's go to bullying. That can come in varying degrees, again, different at all ages, but a lot of cyberbullying seems to be escalating because of technology.
Not only cyberbullying, but sexual predators getting in touch with our children. So there's huge issues with Snapchat, different social media accounts, or even video games. That's another thing a lot of parents don't think
Going
about.
online when you're playing with a group of people.
Because all of a sudden now the potential sex offender is now talking to your child on video games, and then may say, oh, well, why don't you Snapchat me? I need a friend. And they're very good about getting children to use Snapchat instead of text messages, because when you use Snapchat, all the evidence is gone. a lot of forensic interviewers will tell you, oh, like they were giving us all this information about how they were groomed or the process of it, and it was all through messages. So the forensic interviewer wants to know where those messages are. Unfortunately, a lot of times it is on Snapchat because they go away. The proof is
And of
gone.
course the abuser, that predator, is the one that's going to say Snapchat. So parents, be aware that Snapchat is not as innocuous and safe as you think it is, that it's a quick little Snapchat with somebody. It is used by predators because
And
they
have
know the
geotag
evidence.
locations on them. A lot of these apps actually give where your child is at any moment, and they can reach that. So unless you are actually going on every individual app on your child's phone, you don't know if they're sharing their location.
So there's another little bit of information. Go on and check the apps. You are the adult, you are the parent, this is your job. And go on and check those apps and make sure they're blocking the locations. That is a
Right.
very, very good point. So the other thing that I've been hearing a lot about, and I don't know if it falls into this category, but a lot of sexting, and which so I guess is like cyber predator and that kind of thing, sexual predator. Getting girls and boys to send pictures of themselves.
It's huge. It's a really large
It's
issue.
mind-blowing. I know it's there, so I'm not saying I don't know about it, but it is mind-blowing to me that somebody can convince somebody to do something as private and personal.
There's a statistic that states that 60% of teens admit to sending a picture, and that's only that are willing to admit that they've done that in a poll.
60%?
Yes. There's huge issues, and it is going on in your school. If you think it's not, unfortunately it is. It's a huge problem. The great thing about Know and Tell is when we're going into different school districts, we can kind of pinpoint. So if we're talking to a high school, we know that we need to be talking about more child on child, that consent issue, different things like that, versus our younger kids, we're really talking about body safety. There's different pieces that we really hit on during our Know and Tell. But one of the biggest things that we found for Know and Tell going into schools is that they're not following New Hampshire's RSA. So by law, as I said, we are all mandated reporters. But in schools, a lot of schools are saying, no, you don't report this. You can go to the guidance counselor, or you go to the principal, or you go to the administrator, and then you ask them if you should be reporting that.
No, that person should be reporting directly.
But all these different schools, we're finding this is a very common issue.
Why do you
And
think that is?
So one of my coworkers, Stephanie Arroyo, she's great. She was like, what is going on? Like, how is this an issue? Why are all these policies wrong? Well, the sample policy that all the schools use was wrong. So she worked hand in hand with the School Board Association and she fixed it. So that went out this September. But a lot of schools still are really getting used to that, and it's a big change for these teachers. So that's a huge piece of Know and Tell, is really talking about how you yourself need to be making that phone call within 15 to 20 minutes of being disclosed to.
Absolutely. And as a teacher, your welfare is not only to instruct the pupil, but to make sure that they're safe. Right. And if there's anything that seems the least bit wrong or is affecting how that child learns, you're the one who are with them for the most hours per day, 5 days a week.
Right.
So it's your gut and your intuition and your knowledge that's going to reach out and save that child. And I think the word save is not too big a word.
Right. No, I agree. There's a few other things that a lot of people outside of the school district or outside non-facing organizations should know. There's 3 different ways to make a report. So you can call anonymous, which I don't really recommend, because then there's no trace that you actually fulfilled your mandate. You want to have that on record that you did what you were supposed to do. Confidential, that means that you do disclose your name to DCYF, but it's redacted in all documents unless it actually goes to court. Or you could be a full disclosure, and that's really the best way to be, because that means I am an advocate for that child and I'm going to stand up for that child. So that's 3 different ways. DCYF is open 24/7, like I said. And then really just understanding that by making a call, you're not necessarily saying this is happening. It's just saying that I want this child to be checked on. We're really trying to change that stigma.
Something's not right.
It's not lights and sirens. The child's not going to be ripped out of their home. I hear that all the time. I don't want to be the reason that child's ripped out of their home. DCYF really wants to keep families together. If a child is taken away, it's because that child really needed to be, and it was a huge safety concern.
Well, exactly. And then going in and checking on the family or doing a little background, you can find out if it's actually in the family or somebody that's coming to the home,
Right.
because it seems to me it would be a full-out investigation of where is this potential problem coming from?
Right.
Where is the child's safety? Is it on the bus? Is it at school? Is it at home? Is it waiting for the bus? Is it, going to after-school care? Is it going to the YMCA? Whatever that thing may be. And it's just because you're stating that you have a suspicion that there's something wrong.
Right.
There's something wrong. You don't even have to say, I think it's this, I think it's that, because it's not your job. But if you know something is wrong, open your mouth. Say something. Right. I mean, it's kind of,
see something, say something.
See something, say something.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. We've just taken it to the next step. You've taken it to the next step and said, we need to take care of these children.
Right.
These are little innocents. These are future adults, future doctors, future teachers. And why aren't we protecting them?
1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually assaulted by the time they're 18.
What?
Every year we get over 30,000 calls to DCYF, and that's only the calls that are actually made. Think about all those children that are hurting or that something's happening to them, that they are not getting those phone calls made. It really is happening in your backyard, and that's what a lot of people don't want to think about. They say, oh, that could never happen. We live in a great home. That's a great family. Well, anybody that is going to offend a child, they're very good at what they do. It's a grooming process. They've taken years to learn it, and they're going to be able to manipulate and fool you. So It's important to still make that call.
Well, we're coming really close to the end of the show, Jana. Can we touch on quickly, what is grooming? We hear it. We all know the story of Epstein and Weinstein and what goes on in Hollywood and all these different kind of things. It's not just there. It's like you said, it's in our backyard. It's right here. What is a sign or two of grooming and what you should look out for?
When you groom a child, usually it starts by gifts, whether it be something valuable or just the gift of time. Then it's going to actually seclude the child, get the child alone. They've built that relationship, the child trusts them, and then it's going to move on to the actual perpetrating of the child.
Wow.
We
so
see it a
all
lot.
things to look for.
But usually it's 90% of sexual abuse in children. It's someone that they know and it's within their circle. So it's a family member or a family friend or someone that they do life with.
And that you as the parent might not suspect so quickly.
And they'll manipulate you as well.
Exactly. And I know that that the people that groom also threaten the child by, I'm going to go to your mother, I'm going to tell somebody, I'm going to tell your father, or...
Usually it's mom or dad are going to go to jail if you tell me, or something threatening against the family.
Even more. Boy, they've upped the game, haven't they?
Yes.
Wow. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing this information with us, Jana. And again, it's knowandtell.org.
And you can have a training done at any location.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on Chit Chatting with Jocelyn. See you next time.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.